I think one of the hardest things for me is there wasn't the physical abuse and there was the psychological and spiritual and
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting how you addressed psychological abuse or basically you talked about like the soul dying and mine got so bad
Mhm.
where I ended up in the psych ward, which is interesting as you
Mhm.
refer to mental challenges with abuse. So that's really interesting. So why don't you first talk about psychological abuse? And
Right.
how that can be kind of hard if there's not the physical abuse to really understand that it is abuse.
Yeah, psychological abuse is the number one form of abuse used, and all forms of abuse are psychological because they have an emotional impact on the person.
Yes.
And it is the hardest to identify because it looks like normal marital conflict, but it really is not. So, crazy making, mental coercion, gaslighting, whatever you want to call it, um, is usually the number one thing that is done, and it it kind of eats away at the person's confidence and sense of self. So he might say, I didn't say that. I didn't do that when he did say and do those things. Or he might tell you that you said or did things that you didn't say or do. He might tell you over and over that you're crazy. He might agree to something like take, your decision you made with the kids, and then at the last moment pulls out so you're the bad one. Or he may, put things in weird places to make you think that you're going crazy because you can't remember where you put your things. So it's ongoing. It's in multiple areas. It doesn't have to be done with any yelling or swearing or name calling. It be done very, very calmly. And I have had one woman who was with me on and off for 3 years, and he was a well-respected educator, and all of the abuse was psychological. It wasn't obvious forms of abuse. And she kept trying to explain it to everybody.
Mm.
She would talk to her friends, and nobody understood it because it's so hard to explain to people that she ended up losing some of her sense of dignity and some of her friends along the way because she couldn't explain how it was different from just the normal conflicts that we have as couples at times. So this is again a way to, uh, like you mentioned, we talk about it killing the soul, the mind, the will, and the emotions. So I use the analogy of standing at the ocean's edge. If you've ever done that and the water laps at your feet and it pulls the sand out from underneath your feet. And if you don't move, you'll fall. So you do move and then you move again and then you move again. So that's what psychological abuse is like. You're doing that, you're trying to please the other person. You keep adjusting, keep adjusting, keep adjusting. And before long, you begin to wonder, okay, maybe I am the bad one here. Maybe I am crazy. Maybe I am the abuser. So you begin to question yourself and you lose your sense of identity. So while the women go through our recovery program called Her Journey, which is free, uh, they are able to, during that process, regain their sense of self and understand that they're valuable. Not just know it, but believe it with all their heart that God loves them, values them. And when you believe that, you make different choices. And it's a long journey to go on, but it's so well worth it. It's such an amazing thing to watch people change.
Oh, and I think that's the core is that how much God values and how he sees his children, and that abuse of any kind is not what he desires. And it's not
Yeah.
our job to be the suffering or the lamb that should be slain or any of those things.